Delighted to introduce Claire Grove, Customer Advocacy Strategy Director at ServiceNow, the digital workflow company. Claire focuses on building and communicating stories that connect with her customers through advocacy. And here's the key: help her customers achieve their business goals. It's a subject close to my own heart. Here's Claire.
Welcome, Claire. Thank you very much for finding the time for this. I'm looking forward to this. Now, I wanted to ask you at the kickoff, in the world of marketing and kind of specialized control of marketing, could I ask you, why customer advocacy and why now?
Sure. So customer advocacy, I think there's always been a need for it. And over the years, the guise of what that looked like has changed. But if you think about what's going on in the wider world at large and, the importance of trust, I think advocacy becomes increasingly important with that lens. So if you think about trust being at an all-time low, and it's not just me saying that, but if you look at the Edelman 2020 Trust Barometer, they do an annual trust and credibility survey, and they measure trust across a number of different areas. So that's institutions, that's sectors and geographies as well. And they survey something in the region of 34,000 people. And they do that across 28 countries. And the findings this year, perhaps unsurprisingly, shows that trust is at that low point. And particularly in Britain, the trust is the lowest it's ever been across those the global scale of 28 countries. And in actual fact, Russia is the only one that scores lower. So with that backdrop, customer advocacy becomes increasingly important, because you're looking at, what do our advocates say about us? Customers don't want to hear just from the vendor. They really want to dive deeper and get a measure of the experience from people who have tried and tested it. And so I think it's with that light that it becomes even more important.
Okay, so thank you. So that immediately makes me think, in the world of trusted reviews, so to speak, authenticated reviews, there's a certain amount of, if I can use the term, fake news. So how do you build both trust and authentic trust in advocates?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think advocates naturally pride themselves on telling authentic stories, and I think it's up to us as an advocacy function to give them the platforms for doing that. But it's not just reliant on us. Advocates, if you've got the right relationships, will advocate for you whether or not you know about it. But I think part of building that authenticity is being able to give them the space to talk about what's gone really well, but also what were their challenges, what didn't go so well, and how have you perhaps turned that around. So I think connecting advocates to their peers to be able to share those authentic experiences is really critical in that.
Yes, very good. And I'm interested in your point about what went well and what didn't go so well, which tends to bring people in the sales and marketing industry somewhat out in a rash. So how do you handle the what didn't go so well in terms of advocacy?
Yeah, and again, I think that's something that's really important. And I'm smiling as you say it, because it's not an easy thing to do. And actually, I get a little bit hot under the collar thinking about it as well. But that is really important to providing an authentic story. No one, when you're dealing with huge sort of technical projects, the parameters for something going wrong is quite large, and that's with every single vendor across the globe. It's how you put it right and how you address it that really makes a difference. And we're not necessarily even talking about sort of major things. Often it isn't, but even if it's something minor, it's an irritation to the customer. And how do you respond? How do you turn things around? And if you think about, your own personal experiences, I've certainly got experiences with companies where the relationship started out really badly because I bought a service that didn't deliver what it said it would do, and I've been really disappointed. And what has turned me into an advocate is the way that they've dealt with that and the way that they've addressed the issue, fixed it, put it right, and given me assurances that either it won't happen again or this is what they're doing to minimize the chance of that happening. And for me, that just elevates the experience, makes me realize and understand how important my custom is for them and how seriously they're taking that. And that has put me from being a detractor of their service to really being an advocate. And I think it's the same in B2B.
I was just going to ask then, so for a B2B organization, I'm thinking of your own experience here at ServiceNow, are there any practical elements, any manners or methods in which you capture that kind of converting a tricky or not quite right experience into the kind of advocate that goes around as a brand ambassador?
Absolutely. And I think it's about how you activate that and how you give people a platform, because they're going to do it whether you give them a platform or not. And for us, it's really important to learn from our customers' experiences, because if we know what isn't optimum, then we know how to address that moving forward. And again, that's been in every company that I've worked for. What I really love about ServiceNow is that we put the customer front and center of everything that we do. So even during our all hands meetings, there is often a customer speaker who is telling us about their experience and telling us, what do they love about ServiceNow? What's really, making them excited about their relationship? But also, what could we improve upon, and what's important to them from an experience perspective, and also, obviously the technology as well.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you. And so that makes me think about with your customer base, a lot of this, and particularly the customer catalyst, it's about the sea change environment where we're looking for growth. So somewhat the old model of sales-driven product sales, those sorts of things, because in the SaaS world, it's all moved to as a service, it's an ongoing subscription type relationship. How do you think this advocacy relationship helps to drive growth, please?
Well, if you consider that, I think it's Forrester that says that 90% of the buyer's buying decision is made ahead of even getting a sales call. I think the role of advocates and advocacy becomes again increasingly important, because you are really looking at making sure that you've got some air cover, if you like, around the voice of the customer. So it's really important to proactively show up where your customers are or where they might be, because again, you might not actually get a sales call until they've done most of their research. So where they're going to do that research, who are they talking to, what sort of events are they going to, and forums are they looking at? And then how do we connect the customer stories that we create with those things, from everything from top of funnel through to arming our sellers with the information that they need to know to be really relevant and bring forth the voice of the customer.
That's so what you might be saying is it's more than a single channel of customer advocacy. It's advocacy through multiple channels and responding from your perspective. So which are the classic channels you might use for that?
Oh gosh, well, when I talk about top of funnel, social media, I saw a graphic fairly recently that talked about YouTube being one of the biggest search engines. Mm-hmm. So, it challenges perceptions of where content goes, perhaps. So I think it's really important to make sure that that we, as an advocacy team, partner with people across the organisation to not just create that content, but how do we land it, and how do we work with our digital teams to make sure that there's a presence for our social media? How do we work with our campaigns teams so that when they are pushing out their campaigns, the voice of the customer is represented within that? through to our events, through to our sales meetings, and everything in between. So it's really about how do we look at the buyer's journey, and how do we make sure that we've got content that really maps to that at every level.
Yeah, got it. So that's somewhat closer to the classic model in terms of having items for the buyer journey. So perhaps could I just ask you to elaborate a little on the balance between advocate-generated content, those conversations that you're not part of, but which are part of customer advocacy, compared with your generated content, the stuff you're under control. So what's the balance, and how do you encourage your advocates to engage on that journey, to participate in that whole marketing mix?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I think there's 2 points to that question. So the first one I'll tackle is the fact that you said about how do we manage the conversations that we're not a part of, and the answer is we don't. That's the beauty about advocacy, is that people will naturally be having conversations. They'll naturally be reaching out to their peer contacts and asking the questions that we won't get sight of. But if you've done a good job, if your customers have a strong relationship with you, they will naturally advocate on your behalf. So that's one part. And then the other part is, how do we connect people? So in advocacy, and particularly at ServiceNow, it's not just about the public-facing content. It's about connecting our customers to our prospective customers. So how do you connect somebody that's already been there, done it, bought the t-shirt, with somebody who's just setting out on that journey and is looking at best practice, or is looking to show that there is less risk than perhaps they anticipated, or whatever that might be, whatever the driver is? How do you connect like-minded people to be able to have that conversation? And often we're not a part of that, and quite rightly. It means that both parties can share, again, authentically, their experiences. So that's one part. And then you've got the more sort of the marketing face, and it's about creating a win-win. So the beauty about advocacy, and the reason I've stayed in advocacy for so long, is that if you are the custodian of the win-win and creating value, not just for your business, but the customer's business, there's such a beauty in that, because customers get really excited, and it's a privilege to be a part of that. So when I talk about the buyer's journey, we're conscious that our customers want to show up in a particular way also for their employees, or for their customers, or for their shareholders, whoever that might be. So how are we arming them with the content that we're creating that will help them do that as well? So, I've worked with customers who have taken the content and used it for internal comms, or to support a rollout, or whatever they want to use it for. And we also jointly amplify some of the stories that we create through social media. So it's about making sure that everything that we talk to a customer about doing is grounded in the value to them.
That's very interesting. Now, I hadn't thought of that. So thank you. So last question, if I may, would be, are you actively contributing in terms of collateral, maybe video, maybe written pieces, but also, of course, in terms of your time and budget, to your customers' own activities? You mentioned internal comms. That's an interesting partnership.
Yeah, it is. And so everything will look slightly different to each customer. But if you think about the typical reasons why a customer would buy a solution anyway, you can draw some parallels with why they would share their story. And if you think about the 3 sales levers as being, financial, time sensitive, so time bound, brand or reputational, that's often grounded in why customers want to share their stories as well. So some examples of that is at ServiceNow, we're going live with a new campaign that will be really putting the customer at the heart of the story, but not in a traditional sense. So more of an exec to exec conversation, and really, elevating that conversation. So it's not all about the technology, but it shows the experience that they have through working with us and what they're trying to do for their own organisations. So that's one piece. The internal comms piece is another element, in that if, as a project manager, you've just bought, or you're responsible for the implementation of new technology, how do you bring people along that journey with you? How do you get them excited about the opportunities that this is going to bring internally? And if we're creating an external customer story, realistically, it's not much of an investment to be able to make sure that we can really hone in on some of the important things for a customer to be able to share that more widely internally. So we might do a couple of edits as an example. And then also, connecting our customers to the opportunities that come through our comms team. So again, it's not just about creating a story that sits on our web page and we hope that people trip over it and come and find it. It's beyond that. Once we've understood the story, then we can connect people across our business to that story and then go to the customers with opportunities that we know will make sense to them and add value, because we know their story and we know their comms priorities.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you very much. And again, in that piece, I detect this, for me, this thing about those conversations which are outside your sphere of influence and control. And if I may just ask, from your personal point of view, and possibly for other people in your position, how do you deal with the fear, if I can put it that way, of letting those conversations happen?
I think, for me, letting go of any sort of a fear is related to the fact that those conversations are happening. So it doesn't matter that you know about them or you don't know about them. If a customer's experience is good, bad, maybe indifferent, they're going to tell somebody about it. So what we can do is make sure that we are providing the customer with the best experience possible, that they are really, really happy, so that when they're having those conversations, actually it's from a really good place. And I think it's important for customers to be authentic. There's nothing worse than seeing either a written story or a video where it's obvious that the customer's being asked to say, and now can you say this, and can you get the product name in 10 times or what have you, because it just doesn't ring true. And I think the power of advocacy lies in the truth and the authenticity of the customer's story. And again, if we tie that back to trust being why now for customer advocacy, that's the real reason. Ultimately our customers are going to be sharing their experiences. We want to trust that we're providing them with the right experience for them to be able to advocate positively on our behalf.
Smashing. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Claire, for sharing those thoughts. And dare I say, you've made me think, and I might even have learned something. So thank you so much. Thank you, Claire Grove.
Thanks, Toby.
Thank you so much, Claire. As someone from a marketing agency that specialises in creating written, video and socialised customer success stories, there's still a ton I can learn from Claire. And customer advocacy is a key or critical component in the Customer Catalyst story too. My thanks again to Claire from ServiceNow.